When it comes to Uber, a lot of people say that it has a culture problem. It's got this frat boy mentality. It's combative. How much is that holding back the company? We talk about this valuation of $40 billion. Is that holding back the company's valuation?
Well, it doesn't seem to be yet, but let's face the facts. I mean, valuations go up and valuations go down, and this is a valuation that's not exactly a Wall Street valuation. So I think 2015 is going to be a very interesting year for Uber as new competitors come to market, existing competitors ramp up. You know, I'm sitting here in Washington, D.C., which just passed a law that all the taxis, the 7,000 existing taxis, have to use an e-hailing app. And they're also going to be revamping their business model and becoming a co-op. This is going to change things drastically. It's the first city in the U.S. to undertake a complete overhaul of the business model. And I think you're going to see a lot of that in 2015 as cities and the taxi medallion owners have sort of woken up to what's happening around them.
Gabe, is Uber a technology company or is it a transport company?
It's a great question, and you know, I would argue that as they take more and more responsibility for the drivers and background checks, they also have delved into getting leases for their drivers and providing other types of enhancements and financing. I think that they're becoming more of a transportation company. I think it's harder for them to avoid all regulation of any type, which is what they would like to do. And I think they've been able to avoid it enough to get to the $40 billion valuation, but it's coming back to bite them.
I mean, I'd argue that just about any kind of company is a technology company, from farmers to taxi drivers now, Gabe. But, you know, to that point, I wonder, you know, the argument that's made for Uber and that Uber makes quite vociferously is that they're on the side of the consumer. They're using what modern tools they have, technological tools and otherwise, to provide a service, and that the cities are pushing back, are controlled by the cab drivers, are controlled by vested interests that don't have customers in mind. What reasons exist in Chicago and elsewhere for the rules of the road as they stand now?
Well, that's an excellent point. And the thing is that there's truth to that the medallion owners, and you know, there are these groups of people that own hundreds and hundreds, thousands of medallions in places like New York, Chicago, Washington. And when you look at it, though, what Uber's really done is cut the middleman out of the market, but then insert themselves into the market. Now, the benefit is that it's a better quality service for the customer most of the time, and the drivers are actually making a larger chunk of the revenues. So there's a lot of good. But I can tell you that the cities are realizing that the value of their medallions is either going down dramatically or has gone through the floor, and they have less control in terms of regulating their transportation. This is not a big deal as long as there still are taxis, but in some cities where the taxi business may go away, that's when you're going to see, I think, some pretty big issues with cities.
Let me ask that, and I've vested interest. I was a taxi driver in New York City once upon a time. What city do you think we'll see? Yeah, I still have the scars to prove it. What city will we see taxis go away? Which first?
Well, I think in some of the smaller cities, you're starting to see it already where they had poor quality service. For instance, in places like Charleston, where I did some work this summer, where they actually don't have a hail system. You have to call a taxi, and there's no app. But then you also look at places like San Francisco, where business is off by more than 50% for taxis, which is one of the places, you know, where this business started. I think San Francisco is really sort of facing the music, and they have to accept the fact that they may not have a taxi industry if some changes don't come. But I am convinced in 2015 it's going to be the year of the taxi, and you're going to see folks coming together in that industry across cities and figuring out a way to compete with Uber.
Okay, well, in the meantime, there's going to be a lot of competition for Uber vehicles tonight because it is New Year's Eve. And in fact, Uber is trying to preempt some complaints of surge pricing on its busiest day ever. They put out a statement sending emails to everyone, putting it on their blog, that we expect the highest demand and fares between 12:30 and 2:30 a.m. For the most affordable rides, they say, request right when the ball drops at midnight or wait until later for prices to return to normal. Gabe, have customers across the board accepted surge pricing, and it's now just a part of our culture and something that cabs will have to deal with as well?
I think so. And, you know, people, it's not totally fair to Uber to blast them on the surge pricing, because you do get notified that it's going to be surge. Now, it doesn't tell you exactly how much it's going to be, but it'll tell you 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times pricing. Now, when people are under the influence of alcohol, you could argue that they don't calculate it. But as a former transport official in D.C. and Chicago, I can tell you the most important thing is that people do not drink and drive. And so if they're going to spend $100 on an Uber ride, I think that's fine, to be honest, versus drink and drive. And the other thing is that there are other options. There's Lyft. There's Sidecar, there is free public transit in some cities, and there's traditional taxi cabs. So this is just another option. It's not like Uber runs all of our transportation in cities, but I think that Uber is a great option for people that are drinking, and I don't think it's fair to really blast them for the surge pricing.
Gabe Klein, has the taxi industry brought these woes upon themselves?
To an extent, yes. I mean, there are industries like the bus, like taxi, that just haven't changed in 40, 50 years. I think that it's taken a long time for taxis to wake up to the fact that they could actually go away, and let's hope it's not too late. But yeah, I think it was ripe for disruption. Uber, Lyft, others came along. But I think that we should remember that a company like Uber can be disrupted just as they were once the disruptor.